Recently, I talked about the premiere of Warner Brothers, AT&T's Joker movie, in which the psychopathic clown prince of crime, Batman's perennial nemesis, has a movie of his own. And the white males are absolutely loving it. For some reason, they feel that the Joker validates them. They look at the Joker, as far as they're concerned, the Joker is some form of ego stroking for them. And why is that? Why is that? Why the Joker in particular? You would think that if anything, they would simply say, well, sure hope Batman shows up, but they don't. They like the idea of the Joker having his own movie because they feel that he validates them in a way that Batman does not. Oh, Batman puts on his costume and he's supposed to be fear itself, but the Joker, well, what the Joker does is he kills people and he laughs while he's doing it. And for them, that validates them. But it's pretty obvious why that is. You see, it's not really the Joker that you have so many of these white males who are absolutely eating it up like it's something good to eat. What they're really loving is the value system that's promoted here. They love the idea of what the Joker represents as far as the ethos of white supremacy. And you find it throughout their obsession with history, but only with certain historical figures. Why do they love war so much? Because it's the idea of killing that goes unpunished. That to them is the highest expression of the white supremacist ethos. The killing that goes unpunished. You can just kill as many people as you want to. Nobody's going to do anything about it. That's the reason why they love war so much. War is just their chance to finally go hog wild, and it doesn't matter how great the body count is. It doesn't matter what you do. You can engage in the most bestial behavior. You can just vent the most demonic, evil expressions of hate imaginable and stuff that you can't even imagine, and it's all good because you're never going to get in trouble. That's part of the allure of the military for them. Oh God, they hope that a war does break out so they can finally get a chance to heap the bodies up to the sky and no one's going to do anything about it. And for them, the Joker represents the domestic equivalent of the same thing, if not the police. But that's the ethos, which is the white man who goes on a kill spree, whether at home or abroad, and he's never punished for it. He can just do whatever he wants, no matter how depraved. Batman represents fear me or get punched in the face, represents fear of the white man, and the Joker represents the or else. And it's not just Joker, we see this across the board. This love affair, this unholy fascination with the psychopath, with the sociopath, with the ruthless killer. They're historical figures that they love to lionize and canonize and idealize the most. Almost all have a connection to the military, all of which represent some form of either conquest or domination. And almost all of them the individual who gets away with it, because that's the spoils of victory. The spoils of victory are, I'm not punished for what I do. And it doesn't matter if it's Hannibal Lecter, Dexter, American Psychopath, the Joker, whomever. There's a whole litany of it. This has been going on for a damn long time. This is a value system that they feel is being validated. And by the way, just because these are fictional characters, you better not think that that makes them harmless. It does not. Aurora, Colorado, you had this white boy who decided, James Holmes decided, that he was going to paint himself up and dress up as the Joker when he went on his rampage in that movie theater. And he's not the only one. In at least the case of American Psycho, we know that the author of the book that the movie was based on, Bret Eaton Ellis, he is himself an anti-black racist. So that gives you an idea of the mentality of the individuals who create these little white psychopath archetypes. See, they don't ever present any sort of black man in media as being some form of dark genius. You can't think of that. It's difficult enough for a black man who's supposed to be a protagonist to get any sort of shine in the white media. But as far as a black man who's the bad guy, forget about it. Oh, sure, you can have the Dino Browns or whoever it was that Wesley Snipes was playing in New Jack City, but he was the bad guy. And he's only really has one or two memes that go around in the black community. White folks don't consider him to be anything at all. You say Dino Brown to them, they don't know who the hell you're talking about and don't care. And sure, there's a few white folks who may know about HBO's The Wire. Oh, yeah, they like Stringer Bell because they think that Idris Elba's a good actor. Oh, you got this black gangster doing some gangster stuff. Sure, they can get down with that to a degree. But at the end of the day, Stringer Bell is nothing more than a charismatic drug dealer. He's not some dark genius. They don't consider him to be eminently quotable. And there's nothing about him that they feel validates them. No, as far as they're concerned, they ain't trying to walk in the shoes of Stringer Bell. They ain't trying to walk in the shoes of Dino Brown or Avon Barksdale. Or whatever niche black bad nigga figure you can think of. There is a highly racial element to all of these psychopaths that have crossed over into mass consciousness that so many white people in particular think are just the greatest thing ever, that they're just so hyper fascinated with. As black people, we can't understand that because that's not what our value system is based on. It's not based on ruthless killing that you can get away with. White history is tracked by its wars. Black history, traditionally from Africa to the Americas, has been tracked either by kings or been tracked by social movements. It's been tracked by events, but the events weren't wars. And the reason why this issue has gone completely and thoroughly unexamined is that the white media pushes the idea that white psychopaths are some sort of dark genius, painting them up to be bigger than life, that these guys have some sort of unseen brilliance. Well, it's not that these guys are just a bunch of narcissistic scumbags. It's a matter of, well, it's more complex than that. And they elevate these guys to the level of cult heroes like Jim Jones, responsible for the deaths of hundreds of people, most of them black. But the white media makes him out to be some sort of pseudo-antichrist. Oh, he's just as worthy of being known as any religious figure. Just the fact that he killed a bunch of folk, responsible for killing mostly a bunch of black people. Let's put him on a pedestal. And this is what a lot of these white males are seeing. And to them, this is validation. They're social misfits and outcasts, but it's not because people can see that they're sick and dangerous and because there's something wrong with them, but rather because of the ignorant masses who simply can't fathom the depths of these brilliant white guys' genius. The white media's so-called news reports on the latest mass shooter as if they were covering some sort of human interest story. They talk about his job, they talk about his friends, and they make sure that everyone says, oh, he was just so normal, oh, he was just so normal, you see, never would have suspected, oh, just so normal. And when you meet the people who say that, oh, he wasn't, well, it's a matter of let's give him about 2 seconds and then get him off the TV screen. In their online stories about mass shooters, as long as the mass shooter's white, you have to read almost a paragraph or two before they even tell you the guy's a mass murderer. And in many cases, probably most, they don't even mention the fact that the guy's a mass shooter in the headline. Talk about burying the lead. Oh yes, family, the white media is clearly protecting something. Yeah, it's white males specifically that they're protecting, but it's also the social code of white fiat that they're defending. And what does fiat mean? Fiat basically means because I said so. Don't take my word for it, look it up. White supremacy is an idea. And as I've always told you, institutions are the guardians of ideas. That's why institutions exist. A dedicated organization who is there for the sole purpose of protecting a particular idea or ideal. That's the purpose that institutions serve. And the white media is, without doubt, an institution, arguably the most vital, certainly the most influential institution under white supremacy. When it comes to social conditioning, when it comes to mass brainwashing, controlling the public mind, the white media is where indoctrination meets the public mind. People in the society get a nonstop diet of white media lies, obfuscations, distractions, diversions, excuse making, and mental gymnastics. The white media is where the absurd magically becomes plausible. But of course, it's not magic at all, it's simple psychology. People mostly remember whatever they hear the most. So if they hear a lie the most, that's what will become the accepted official version of events. And the same goes for white mass killers. Since the white police almost never kill, some mass shooter or some white person who commits a heinous crime is almost always taken alive because that's their code. We, as a result, have been able to amass a long-standing and well-documented history of these mass killers' confessions in their own words. Tons of documentation of these mass killers explaining exactly what their thought processes were, from Charles Manson to Timothy McVeigh. They all give some pseudo-sob story because the white media made it clear for hundreds of years that no matter how reprehensible a killer's crime is, if they're white, they're going to be sympathized with. The white media makes sure to remind the public that a white criminal is always a human being. In fact, they stress that he's a human being first. His crime, well, the crime, that's just incidental. Don't forget that this guy is a human being. Why, he's no different than you. Remember, he's a human being, no matter how animalistic his crime. So these killers are free to blame their victims for being murdered. And because nobody ever decides to tell the pig simple truth about their behavior, the public mostly accepts that. And of course, no one in the white media actually ever challenges these blatant lies. Timothy McVeigh killed a bunch of children in the Oklahoma City bombing, but when asked how he felt about it, it didn't bother him in the slightest. And when asked how he could justify killing children when he himself blamed the government for the same crime, he blamed the government for the deaths of children and said that's why he had to blow up the Oklahoma City, that's why he had to blow up the Alfred Murrah building. He compared the children that he murdered in that nursery to stormtroopers from Star Wars. Well, they were in the same building as ATF headquarters, so that basically made them no different than stormtroopers. These kids didn't know anything about the government. Probably had no idea that there was any sort of government office where they were, and dang sure not ATF, and wouldn't know what the heck that was anyway. And not to go into psycho white killer territory, but kids in a nursery that just happens to be in the same office building that the ATF was renting space in, that's not the same as Randy Weaver's gun-toting teenage son. Timothy McVeigh's justification for the murder of children, it was contradictory and ridiculous. But then again, it didn't have to make any sense. He knew it didn't have to make any sense. He knew that he was a white man in a society where his crime only accrued to him, and that he lived in a country whose social climate was set by a racist media who would inevitably and did treat him like some sort of mad genius. Timothy McVeigh's crime was not about him. It was about the entire overreach of the government. Oh, it was about the conflict between some of these right-wing activist types, some of these would-be survivalists, and it became a whole political question about militias versus the government and possible governmental overreach or possible militia overreach. But the point is, that's what it was about. Race had nothing to do with it. Never mind the fact that you have a country that was supposed to be ethnically diverse, and yet this was a tug-of-war, an argument between a white government and some self-styled survivalist white citizens. Why is it that the racial aspect never came to the fore? Timothy McVeigh was a devotee of that racist novel, The Turner Diaries, which was exactly the kind of thing that he was acting out. See, the Joker and Hannibal Lecter and the Turner Diaries, they may seem like crackpot fiction for you. But for these white males, when they live in a society that it not only allows them to do whatever they want, but encourages them to do whatever they want. They can take any flight of fancy, especially the more racist, the better, and they are free to act on it, encouraged to act on it. As far as they're concerned, stuff like the American Psycho and the Turner Diaries, these are life options for them. These are choices to be made. To kill or not to kill? That is the question, though one that they've already got a pre-planned answer for. That's the message that these white killers take away from the white media. Shocking killings, especially the ones that get a lot of headlines. That's the way to get people to remember your name. You're going to teach them to take you seriously whether they want to or not. Oh, so it's about fame, right? Well, fame is what rich people get. Fame is what movie stars and politicians get. But for the working class or otherwise anonymous white male, the unaccomplished white guy who really doesn't feel that he should have to do anything, and as far as he's concerned, why should he bother? Oh, he's so put upon, he's so victimized because, hey, nobody's been more historically disadvantaged than the pale males, right? Well, for him, he doesn't worry about fame. Fame is what Tom Cruise and it's what President Bush are interested in. For the anonymous white male, the genius in his own mind, he'll settle for infamy. In fact, that's what he's supposed to have. He's been denied by the society, mistreated by the society. He's not like those white guys who have been mollycoddled by the society. Never mind the fact that practically all these white killers come from backgrounds where they had families who had means. At the very least, they were treated a hell of a lot better than the average black teenager who follows the rules, does what he's told. They have delusions of persecution, and to them that justifies anything that they may want to do. And whatever justification that they're not able to do in their own minds, that's okay. The white media will come up with some flim-flam bit of verbal vomit in order to justify their behavior, so they'll be covered one way or the other. But that's what these guys, they've made their peace with the idea that's what they'll settle for. Among white people, they kind of define who the winners and losers are. The winners are the people who actually get their names out there, who get into a movie or get a big music contract or make it into high office. Those are the winners in white society. Well, what do the losers do? Well, the white folks who have to settle for not being a A-list celebrity, who don't become rock gods and who don't become heads of state. What do they have to settle for? They settle for infamy. These white people over here, they became famous by doing something good, or at least doing something legal. And the others, well, they'll just do something horrifying, the more the better. I can't be the head of state, so I'll be the king of the mass killers. But the white media will show a large amount of deference for them either way, no matter what life choice they make. White celebrities who take drugs and get nabbed for some terrible crime, the white media simply says that they suffered a fall from grace. The angry white male who predictably goes on a shooting spree, he gets defended by the same white media with headlines asking, what made him snap? But in both cases, neither the famous nor infamous are made to take responsibility for their behavior, so long as they're not black. If you're black, well, you are responsible, even if you didn't do it. Oh, some black person held up a liquor store, allegedly. Well, the whole black community is accountable for that. You're all responsible for that. That's just how you people are. So this built-in white media support provides a huge incentive to whatever would-be white, mad, dark genius is out there who wants to do whatever. So even when these white men concede that their victims didn't deserve to die, they nonetheless blame their victims anyway. So what's the real point these white killers are making? The point is that they have a divine right to kill. There clearly was no other thought process going on in their heads. They chose some target, and the target could have been chosen. I mean, you look at these targets, they were practically chosen at random. They come up with the rationale for it almost as an afterthought. Just a matter of wherever I can kill some people at, that's okay. Klebold and Harris, who shut up Columbine, these two were a couple of anti-black racists. In fact, they'd even said that part of the reason why they were going to do it was because they wanted to kill some black people. Never mind the fact that there was a total of only a handful of black kids in their entire school. Out of all their victims, only about one of them was black. But they didn't seem to care about that. See, there's the rationale and then there's the real reason. Timothy McVeigh, the government kills kids. But you killed kids. Yeah, but those kids, they were like stormtroopers in Star Wars. They weren't real kids. The white powers that be have done all sorts of backflips and mental gymnastics, and they've pretzeled their forked tongues in knots trying to talk around the issue. In the past, they called for a war on poverty, and right after that, Richard Nixon's war on drugs, which became the white politicians' issue du jour, whether they be on the left or the right. A war on crime, a war on crack, all of these things just being used as euphemisms for black people. Oh, if we're going to have a war on drugs, then aren't we going to have a war on meth? No, we don't need a war on meth. That's the wrong response. Well, with all these mass shootings going on, why, it's a battlefield in the streets, so there's going to be a war on mass shooters, right? Wrong. Even the right-wing nuts who claim that guns don't kill people, people do. Well, where's their proposal for punishing mass shooters? Where's their proposal for a war on mass shooters? See, if you got some Muslim in California who goes on a shooting spree, well, we need laws. We need the police to get tough. We need to punish proactively. We don't need to wait until the next mass killer. We need to do something now to get these guys. So what about the next white male who runs into a school and shoots it up? Well, you can't control everything, You never hear them saying that you can't stop terrorism. You can't stop these radical Muslims. So, well, you can't stop terrorism. You basically have to just accept it. Why? You can't control everything, and that's just the way it is. We have to accept that there are some things that are beyond our control. No, they say to move heaven and earth. They say to arm the military and the police to the teeth, to deputize the public, and drop bombs on every square inch of the Middle East. These white NRA types who have no suggestions about what to do about white mass shootings, they are not at all apathetic when it comes to radical Islam. But when it comes to mass shooters, all of a sudden these same zero-tolerance right-wing types are only too glad to sit on their hands and shrug their shoulders and say, well, it's kind of hopeless. There's some things we just have to accept. Because the radical Muslims are not white, and the mass shooters almost always are. One of them represents a problem for the white status quo, while the other one represents their freedom as they see it. The presidential primaries are already underway, and not one of the Democrat candidates is making a crackdown on mass shooters into a plank of their political campaigns. Not even one. So it seems that Parkland has already been forgotten. And David Hogg and all of his friends, and David Hogg himself has revealed himself for what we pretty much were sniffing him out to be from day one. It's amazing, he wanted to use that shooting as a platform for his own political, social ambitions. But the Democrats ain't going to be helping him out with that. If one of his ambitions is to make sure that Parkland doesn't repeat itself, to make sure that Parkland becomes the springboard to meaningful change regarding gun control, regarding reining in the white males who go on killing sprees, he better wait for some other political party because the Democrats ain't in his corner. The closest the Democrats have gotten to actually tackling the issue was the cynical dodge of calling mass shootings a public health issue. Gee, where have we heard that phrase before? Oh yes, it's the same thing that white politicians say whenever asked about the meth epidemic. They don't talk about more prisons for mass shooters. They don't talk about the police doing stop and frisk on white males just to make sure you ain't packing heat. They don't say anything about one strike, because when it comes to guns, you don't need to wait for 3 strikes. 3 strikes is too many. One is enough. Nope, none of that. No Rockefeller laws regarding white male gun ownership. No talk about harsher sentences and tougher laws. No talk about zero tolerance, because when it comes to guns, you can't afford to have any strikes, so it's got to be zero tolerance. No, none of that. Meth is used almost exclusively by white people, so we can't look at it as something to be punished. We need to give these people counseling, not prison. Why, these are human beings. We must never lose sight of that. Why, I got some folk in my family who are strung out on meth. That's what the white politicians did. And this is the same hands-off rhetorical strategy that we see the Democrats using when it comes to mass shootings. And they know it. They are not at all oblivious to the irony here. This is the entire point. You think the Democrats want to do something about mass shootings? They're running a game on you. They know that that's not their goal. You're the one who's pretending as if it is. If you want to curtail or stop any sort of activity in society, then you do it by punishing it. That's how you curtail it. That's how you stop it. By punishing it. This wink and a nod attitude by the white authorities they're not fooling anyone. Well, let me rephrase that. They're not fooling those of us who are honest about the situation. A lot of other folks, they are being fooled because the truth of the matter is there's no cure for stupid. Mass shootings are a sanctioned crime, just as the 2008 economic banksters were not allowed to be punished. Whiteness trumps the law. Frederick Bastiat once wrote that when plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. Folks, that sums up white supremacy in a nutshell. They have created a legal system filled with police who look the other way or otherwise give a wink and a nod to all manner of white supremacist criminality, DAs who refuse to charge or who lowball the charges, judges who throw the case out altogether, or if they can't do anything else, they give the lightest sentence possible. And then they got a white media that pushes and promotes the idea that these guys are evil geniuses. They overwhelmingly control all venues of the society, most damningly law enforcement, and as a result, they have bestowed upon themselves blanket immunity from the law. This is an open conspiracy to never punish one another unless they commit some ghastly crime against a white person. Otherwise, nothing will be done to them. It's blatant, it's racist, and this is something, an evil that dare not speak its own name. Well, I'm going to speak it. Under white supremacy, being white, especially a white male, is not the same as being, say, a black person. Because white power dominates every aspect and arena of life under white supremacy, and white power has acted very differently than practically every other demographic in the society. You cannot say that if I claim that I'm a white man, that means the same as a black person. No, because the two manifest themselves very differently in the society. When a black person breaks the law, they can expect to be demonized by the white media, to be pursued and arrested by the white police, to be given the most aggressive prosecution by the white authorities, and to receive the harshest punishment under law. What will not happen is that they'll be sympathized with, that the white media is going to do puff pieces talking about the jobs this person had, or maybe they owned a business, or this person was loved in the community, or nobody ever thought that they were like this. It's going to be a hell no. We're going to give you the rundown of every bad thing that we can say about this guy because he's black. They won't have anyone portraying them as a dark genius. They'll just be a violent Negro, just another violent Negro who was nothing more than a mad dog on the loose. And society's better off with this mad dog put down or put in a cage. And he can also expect that the white media, the politicians and academics will attempt to racialize whatever crime he committed and to be able to convict the black community by proxy, to pathologize the black community that, well, Pookie or Ray Ray allegedly did some crime and the entire black community is to blame for it or otherwise accountable for it. And who will be the ones who do all this? It's going to be the same white supremacists who turn a blind eye to every mass killing that takes place. We have seen the weaponization of whiteness. It's been effectively weaponized. Under white supremacy, the white media is owned, run by, staffed by, and presented to you by white people or their non-white surrogates. No matter the skin color of whomever the presenter is, the message they deliver is always the same. If white people, particularly white men, do something bad, then that's just one guy. It has to be compartmentalized and isolated only to him. And by the way, you have to sympathize with him because he's a human being. The killer is never presented as a demonic psycho. There's never an attempt to look into his background so we can see how dirty he is, how many people he's hurt, how many laws he's broken, how much trouble he's been in, and why the society didn't move in on him and everyone who looks like him sooner. A white criminal is never pathologized. No link is ever drawn between a white criminal and the fact that he's white. It's always an isolated incident. Mass shootings are never presented as yet the latest example of white psychopathology. Instead, it's watered down to and reduced to nothing more than a mere gun control issue, a public policy debate about the Second Amendment. That's all it is, a Second Amendment issue. It's a constitutional discourse that we're having, but it's certainly not racial. Don't bring race into it. Okay, well, there was one person who shot another person on the south side of Chicago. Granted that there were no suspects caught, so it could have been the cops for all we know, but we'll have the white media say there was black people anyway. They'll infer that. And well, that's not a Second Amendment issue. That's a black community issue. Okay, then how is it that all these white guys go on all these killing sprees? That's not a white community issue. Most of their victims are white. Only difference is they kill a lot more people than Pookie or Ray Ray do on a Saturday night. No one ever asks what the hell is going on in white homes that causes this to keep happening over and over and over and over again. And nobody asks, when is there going to be some moral courage that takes place in the white community that causes them to have a discourse about it? When is white on white crime going to get put on the map? What politician dares to say it? None of them do. Because they have defined white as a tabula rasa normalcy. And because of that, when you say white, you're saying normal. When you say white, you're saying American. When you're saying white, you're saying right. So there is no need to say white. American is a euphemism for white. There is no need to say white because law-abiding citizens, law and order, what have you, whatever crap, as long as it's something complimentary, then that by default means white. As long as you're talking about anything that means well-adjusted and happens to be good-natured, well, that means white. It's things like thug and super predators. That's black. This type of discussion is not merely muffled, it's censored altogether, primarily by the white media. They treat it as something other than what it clearly is, and as a result, the public has been conditioned to look at it as something other than what it is. The white public, white males in particular, are never told that this kind of behavior is dead wrong. Instead, the message that the white media sends is that their behavior is basically acceptable. You'll have white liberals who will not directly confront the issues, so white killers never have to have anybody point out, hey, this is wrong, and look what we white people are doing to one another. And white people on the right either defend the preferred means of white male lashing out unfettered access to guns, and a society that refuses to act as if it's white males carrying out these massacres, so these killers are shielded from ever having to hear that they're wrong. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They are encouraged and validated. They basically get two narratives that are merely variations on the exact same theme. It's the society who's to blame, either for not having done enough to take care of said angry white male, or perhaps he was bullied, or perhaps he didn't get enough affection from his mother, or perhaps some other bit of psychological babbling which doesn't mean anything. It's all just excuse making. Doesn't matter what kind of pseudo psychological gibberish that they try to cover it up with. It doesn't cover up the smell. And on the right, it's a matter of, well, it's these liberal lawmakers or what have you, but nobody ever talks about punishment. That issue will not come up. The society is responsible for the latest white male who decides to go on a shooting spree, either for what it did or what it didn't do. But who's not responsible is the killer himself. And don't ask us to get proactive. We only do that if we think that we can get some black folks. The white left and the white right are working together to help to promote this fraudulent message, because neither one of them focuses on prevention, and none of them are going to bring up the issue of hard punishment. Nobody's going to say, what are we doing to put laws on the books if we start policing these angry white males the same way that we have always policed black people? Why, we could stop these mass shootings overnight. That won't come up. No one's going to make that into a plank of their policy platform. Nobody's going to be calling themselves running on that idea, even though that's the very idea that they require. Hillary Clinton will never describe any of these white shooters as super predators, even though there's a mass killing on a near daily basis. No, she instead prefers to talk about hard-working white people. Psychological masturbation by the media, by the politicians and social types, that's precisely the kind of garbage that makes it where they feel like they're not doing anything wrong, or at the very least, they don't have to face up to what they're doing. This encourages the next mass shooting. And in these guys' minds, they have taken a leave from reality. When someone has everything handed to them and is praised nonstop without deserving it, without earning it, that is a surefire recipe for a fragile ego. Because what you've done is you put them in a circumstance where they're getting rewards without having done anything for it, which is completely backwards. They're never called out, never challenged on anything, never corrected, never told the word no. And they're never told that their behavior is wrong no matter what. So what happens is they are endlessly validated and rewarded for nothing. So they do not know and do not care about what the consequences of their behavior are, because they've been conditioned that they should expect and that you owe them praise no matter what. That's what it comes down to. And then somebody like myself comes along and says, hey, there might be something wrong with this, and heads explode. Well, let them explode. I'm taking a page out of the white media book. I ain't taking responsibility for the mess. People's heads want to explode because they don't like the truth. That's their problem, not mine. My problem happens to be that you've got a situation where the next mass shooter is already oiling up his AR-15, and he's deciding to choose some target at random, not because the people in the building or in the church or in the school or in the movie theater or on the street did anything to him, but because he's a white male and he's angry because he is, and everything he does is justified, and he has the right to kill if the society doesn't kiss his behind with sufficient adoration. And these mad genius archetypes, this is just Hollywood jumping on the bandwagon because they know that there's a lot of white males who want to see these daydream, psychotic versions of themselves. That's the kind of daydreams that the white males have. These white males have daydreams of being Hannibal Lecter. They have daydreams of being Dexter. They have daydreams of being American Psycho. They have daydreams of being the Joker. In fact, if you look at what a lot of these white guys have been saying the last week about that Joker trailer, the main thing that they've been saying is, yeah, the white guys have been getting kicked around for too long. And it's time to show them we mean business. It's kind of like after Donald Trump got elected, you had all these white males running around saying, America is back. America never went anywhere. All the drone strikes in the Middle East increased substantially under Barack Obama. What the hell are you talking about? America gone. America's footprint in the world became bigger under Barack Obama. The only difference was he wasn't as obnoxious as George Bush. That's the only difference. So when they say America is back, what are they really saying? They're saying white men are back. We're back in charge. The white man is back. That's what they really mean. Well, for the last couple of years, Especially in the movie theaters, if you're a white guy, you've had something that you hadn't seen before, which is non-white males who are becoming some of the biggest money makers at the multiplex. Now, for black folks, we don't get bent out of shape about this kind of thing because we have real problems in the real world. But for the white males, they've already monopolized the money, the power, and the resources. So for them, every sort of petty bitch and gripe that they've gotten, that seems to be a bottomless well for them. That becomes the issues of great import for them. They don't have any real problems, so they're making problems up. And their biggest problem is people aren't kissing our behinds. We're not the end all and be all. And we don't like what we're seeing at the movie theater. That's their biggest concern. You can tell people who are looking for something, anything to get outraged over. You have a black stormtrooper, and that's white genocide. Yeah, that's what for them rises to the level of an outrage. There's less black people in the new Star Wars movies than there were in George Lucas's movies, and yet that ain't enough. Because when somebody is hideously insecure, when someone suffers from a perpetual inferiority complex, you can never reassure them enough. So you've been seeing online, no doubt, how these guys have had one pathetic jihad after another. Pop culture seems to be the place where they think they're going to amass, because it's not that they care about pop culture. That's where they see a lot of the young white males at, and that's the reason why so many of these hate mongers have glommed there. That's the reason why. They said to boycott Black Panther. Well, we all see how well that turned out. Black Panther was a complete failure at the box office now, wasn't it? But it succeeded. They went on Twitter, and I remember reading about how there were people, white supremacists on Twitter, who were passing around videos taken at a completely unrelated event years ago with some black people and some white people having a fight in the parking lot of some movie theater. And you had white supremacists on Twitter saying, look, this is video of some black people beating up some white people at the Black Panther movie premiere. They did that on the night that Black Panther premiered in the US. Now, Disney, showing that they have upped their game, they were on that on Twitter in a heartbeat and started shutting those accounts down immediately, blocking and having Twitter block and ban those people. And then afterwards, you had these same white males who were using, I guess, their alternate accounts or something and saying, oh, we were just joking. We were only kidding. The hell they were. But that just shows you, to them, Black Panther being a financial success, that's a threat to them. That happens to be an intolerable threat. That is a threat to their very existence. And here they are, they're using all the same bullcrap talking points that may play well in their small white supremacist circle, but doesn't play anywhere else. And when the would-be boycott of Black Panther failed to materialize, it wouldn't have worked anyway because boycotts generally don't work, they just can't understand why. No surprise. They've never had to actually understand anything. And when the world has been twisted and misshaped and warped beyond all recognition into a butler that panders to you and tells you nonstop how great you are, you don't need to understand the world any more than a picky eater at a restaurant needs to understand how the restaurant he's sitting in came to exist, how the wait staff came to be there, where the food he's bitching about got to his table, or who made or even brought it to him. All he has to do is sit down and enjoy the unearned and undeserved meal that he's getting, and yet he still feels compelled to whine about it anyway. Wouldn't be so bad except for the fact that there's a white media that takes every white whine and gripe and elevates it to the level of great import and treats it seriously. This is something we should consider. See, white society has tried to mount one half-baked boycott after another, and if they weren't so arrogant, they could have asked us and learned from us why that's not a good idea. And the thing is, they may think to themselves that they're putting a thumb into the eye of the society that refuses to value them, because, let's face it, if you go to the movie theaters right now, how many of those movies actually star white guys, huh? Oh, I'm sorry. basically all of them. This is what they've been reduced to. Having nothing real in their empty little lives to do, they see real people taking real action against real forces of antagonism, whether it be the civil rights movement or whether it be the Black empowerment movement, and it reminds them how empty and vacuous their own meaningless existences are. So at long last, white supremacy has reached its asinine and absurd conclusion. White males own everything, control everything, have gotten everything, and yet they whine the most about what they don't have and what they're not getting and what they think they're owed. Racist trolls who think anti-black memes are somehow meaningful. You got white males who obsess over white genetic purity and bodybuilding, preparing for a war that's, in truth, a war that most likely isn't coming. White male hegemony is not going to be toppled from without. It doesn't have to be. It's already rotted from within. This white male dominated order won't have to be knocked down. It will simply collapse. At this point, what they're hoping for is that they can get rid of all of the black folks before they themselves crumble to dust. And that's what you see going on right now. Because in the meanwhile, these mass shooters in waiting, they're going to do plenty of whining and plenty of shooting and plenty of pretending to be victims, even if they can't tell anyone who or what is victimizing them. This pathetic subculture of habitual bitching and whining and moaning, this is what they think of as manhood. And again, it wouldn't be so dangerous if it wasn't for the fact that they had seized the levers of power in the society, and because of that, they have the ability to give themselves de facto immunity from law. There should be people lined up to stop them, but the problem is they've gamed the system to make it very difficult for those individuals to enter into the arenas of authority. And then they've got all sorts of back doors, they got all sorts of roadblocks and tripwires to make it where any attempt to punish them gets short-circuited either by some racist white supremacist judge. Look at the Jason Van Dyke trial for an example of that. Or if you got a judge who actually does follow the law, well, there's going to be some appellate court or some parole board who'll look and say, well, he's white and we ain't punishing him. This is what's going on right now. So no, I do not believe that any of this is incidental, because it's not. The media does not reflect any sort of random choices. The stuff that they're putting out there is stuff that they want to be out there. The media is not in the business of entertainment. They are in the business of mind control. And part of mind control is to acclimate people to absolutely outrageous social norms. That's part of mind control, to get people to accept things that they normally would consider to be completely and thoroughly reprehensible and unacceptable. So don't let any of them hide behind that garbage about it's just a movie, not for them, it's not. Listen to how they're reacting. Look at what these guys are saying. Look at how vicious and aggressive their response to all this has been. Far as they're concerned, this is a dramatization of how they feel that they would like to respond to all of this unencumbered non-white male as they see its success that's going on. They're seeing something, people who don't look like them, who at the very least, just because a couple of movies that don't even benefit black people, by the way, but just because a couple of movies show some people who are not white males as being the winners in the movie, and that the non-white people are not reduced to being nothing more than a sidekick for the white guy. As far as they're concerned, somebody needs to do something. As far as they're concerned, well, they empathize with the Joker because they feel like, yeah, I look at that trailer and seeing the Joker getting slapped around and people laughing at him and kicking him in the cojones, and they just, here he is, he's reduced to nothing more than a joke. Yeah, that's what they think of. That's what they think of us, but they don't know. They don't know what we're capable of, but they're gonna find out. It is never just a movie when you have a segment of society who sees psychopaths and killers as being their validation. To them, this is a matter of, yeah, we're going to teach you not to mess with the white guys, because if you do, why, you better believe there'll be some vicious, horrendous death waiting for you. And the best part is, we're going to be revered and hailed as a dark genius as the result. This encourages killings, and that's not what we need. We need for this kind of subculture to be called out. We need for the individuals practicing this to be pointed out, and we require punishment for this kind of behavior. Punishment is what's called for, not a big budget motion picture.